Welcome everybody to the first Pathways to Adult Success Solution Forum for the 2022-2023 school year. We're so glad to have you here with us today. And we're starting off with really a great set of presentations and dialogues about how we can start the school year right by scaling school community collaborations for student success. And we're really excited to have two great presenters with us today, sharing work that's going on in two communities to really try to figure out how do we bring this to scale, working with community partners to bring additional student supports into our schools. We're going to hear from our friends from the Big Brothers Big Sisters Eastern Missouri, from Ashley Seiler, the Chief Partnership Officer, and then we're going to hear from our friends from the Baltimore City Public Schools and Sophia Holmes, the Mentoring and Adult Relationship Manager, both sort of telling the work that's going on in their communities. And then we'll have some open discussion and resource sharing and talk a little bit about upcoming events. For those of you that are new to our solution forums, we have a large and diverse group of people from K-12, higher eds, nonprofits. We really see this as a sharing and solutions forum. So we really want you to use the chat while our presentations are going on to share ideas, resources, and to ask questions. And then at the end of each of the presentations, we'll have a Q&A, and we'll also have a general discussion at the end of both of them. And as always, we'll be recording this and sharing out the recording and all the resources that are shared, both from our presenters and from audience members, to folks after the session, and have them available on our website. So the Solutions Forum is part of our larger Building Pathways to Adult Success Collaborative, and really it's never been more crucial that we figure out how to do that for all students, right? The pandemic has really disrupted existing student support and guidance systems. Uncertainty has sort of become the norm, and this is impacting momentum to and through post-secondary. And we actually know from a lot of work that things that interrupt momentum for kids are things which actually often make it more challenging for them to actually succeed in the long term. So really central to that is figuring out how can we provide the systems of supports needed to deal with this uncertainty and to deal with these disruptions and have enough to do this at a scale so really we can reach all kids and not just those that we were able to. Next slide. And really with this, the way I want to just sort of frame this conversation today, I think, is that, we all had high hopes for last year. It's sort of the first year when we were sort of more closer to what normal schooling looked like. And people were either hoping for a return to better or a return to normal based on what their goals were. And yet, as we talk to both our teachers and our student support staff people and the students themselves, many said in many ways it was the most challenging year yet, right? That despite those hopes, it would turn out to be very challenging. And the question was, why was that the case? What could we learn from that to make sure we have the supports and structures needed so it's not the case? And I think a key thing that stands out was really the pandemic disrupted school connectedness, right? And this rich fabric of relationships which really drive well-being and school success. And it really, I think it showed to us that it mattered even more than we thought. And we really saw how much it mattered when we lost it and how it didn't snap back together instantly. And it really was, in a way, that relationship gap, which I think contributed to a lot of the struggles last year. Because if you think about a traditional middle school, right? 6, 7, 8, traditionally, the 6th graders are new. They're sort of off on a transition process to bring them into school. The 7th and 8th graders are returning. They know each other. They know the teachers. That's the stable force. Well, last year, because of the year before was remote learning for most kids, 6th and 7th graders were new to the school and new to each other and new to their teachers. And now 2/3 are new and only 1/3, and they've had a year off too, right? So they've had disruption. So it was a very different situation of all those existing relationships weren't there. And then on top of it, we had staffing shortages, which meant at the very time we needed more relationships formed, we had fewer adults to form them. And I think once you recognize that, so many of the things of the challenges with chronic absenteeism and some behaviors and various things, sort of fall into place. And we also know from the work many folks have been doing in the greater Pathways to Adult Success learning community is that community partnerships can help close those gaps. But the challenge, and that's where we're going to really focus today, is how do we form and sustain these partnerships at the scale required, right? So it's not just a few schools have a few partners in a few ways, but how do we work in a collective, thoughtful way so those partnerships really provide schools, and different schools have different needs. How do we find a way that they can really sort of fill in those relationship gaps so really every kid can have those strong connections to school? And that's really where we begin today to learn from our panelists and the exciting work they're doing. So I'm going to turn first to Big Brothers Big Sisters Eastern Missouri and Ashley Seiler to have us share the work they're doing. Ashley, over to you.
Thanks, Bob. It is so great to be with you all today to share a little bit about the work happening in Eastern Missouri with Big Brothers Big Sisters. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our ABC Today model, but first just share a little bit about who we are at Big Brothers Big Sisters. So if you want to go to the next slide, our mission really is to partner with young people in the pursuit of a meaningful, stable, and independent life. So we actually work with youth aged 5 through 25 in really 3 different markets. So our footprint is all of Eastern Missouri, and we work obviously in St. Louis, City, County, St. Charles, and then we take a little bit of a dip all the way into Southern Missouri and in the region that I'm located, our southernmost region, Cape Girardeau, where our ABC Today work really got started. But our programs that we have listed out that you can see in the slide really are integrated and require partnerships and both with schools and our community to really serve the youth within our community. So with that, let's talk a little bit more about ABC. So ABC Today really has 3 components. And just to give you a little bit of a historical perspective, like Big Brothers, Big Sisters, the core of the work that we do is still very much centered around mentoring. But what we found in this work is that the partnerships that we build with schools really enhance the opportunity to bring more mentoring services to young people. And so back in 2007, we partnered with our school district in Cape Girardeau and essentially created ABC Today. And a lot of the research at the time, a lot of it coming out of everything that we could find said that collecting attendance, behavior, and course performance was really a key indicator for young people in our communities in determining future success. And so we ran with that at the time. And said, okay, if that really is indicative, then let's start collecting it. And so through a couple of years of partnership with our school district, we were looking at that at our little brothers and little sisters who were attending the school. And then a few years later, they came to us and said, this is really fabulous that you're showing us this data on your little brothers and little sisters, but we have a whole lot of kids in our district. So there are 4,000 in the district there. We really want to figure out with you how we can bring this model to other kids to support them throughout the entire school. And so really walking in true partnership with them, we launched this collective impact model. So it really has 3 components. So the first is the network. So each school that we work with is supported by a network of community partners who are responsible for looking at student data and having responses to that. And then, of course, you have to have data. So the data is a key component of that. And we collect that on a quarterly basis for all of the young people who are attending schools. And then we have created what we call a cycle, where the first thing that we do is really try to celebrate with schools. Oftentimes, as a society, we go straight to the problem instead of really celebrating where there are great successes. So we try to celebrate first. And then outside of the celebration, we really try to understand what's happening within each school and create some kind of customization or some kind of plan about what all of us as partners are going to do to really support that individual school and the individual students and staff who are attending that school. So just to give you a snapshot of like what that network looks like, it's really determined by each school. And again, true partnership, we talk with the school and say, who are your partners? Who are your unnamed partners? Who are the people that are showing up doing things? And then how do we fill gaps from that? So obviously, the school leader is an integral part of the network. And then Big Brothers Big Sisters serves as the backbone for this collective impact model. We recognized very quickly from the beginning that we wanted mentoring to be a seat at that table because, again, mentoring is the work that the core of the work that we do at Big Brothers Big Sisters, but also recognized that parents have a seat, business partners have a seat, faith-based partners have a seat, and then we also have other social service partners, other educational partners, but there are some essential seats that at every network we want to make sure that we're looking for and we fill. So outside of the network, then just to give you a snapshot of like what this looks like throughout the school year. Each of those networks meet 4 times a year. They have a kickoff meeting at the beginning of each school year to really understand what the school priorities and the school strategies are for that year, hearing from school leaders, learning from last year's results, and then we meet each quarter afterward after we collect the data from all of the students within that building. And of course, it's high-level data. So we don't see individual student data, but we get to see trend data. We get to see cohort data and then make decisions about that. And as I said, first, it's celebrating students in the school for successes. So we do things like letters home to parents for students who are recognized as students of the month. We're recognizing students who may have improvement in their attendance, recognize them at school assemblies for different achievements that they may have. And then again, work with schools to develop strategies to impact students. So maybe it's an attendance challenge to get a cohort of students on track to be coming to school more often. Sometimes we've hosted career different kind of activities to really support particularly students in secondary schools in their pursuit of post-secondary options that may be available to them. But the biggest thing is that it's just a lot of constant engagement and communication between the school and school partners, really in understanding that, yes, we can set plans at the beginning of the school year, but things change throughout the school year. We all lived through that in 2019, 2020 school year, right? When things changed very suddenly. So it does require a lot of communication between all of us and just having those feedback loops between staff that are working in schools to communicate about what things they're seeing and what things are happening in the different communities. So I have just a few examples through pictures because I think pictures are cool to showcase. But one picture, the first that you'll see on this slide, was just immediately in 2020 when we incurred, the biggest shift in all of our lives. We quickly were able to get some partners aligned to do food distribution during the pandemic. So it was a quick, easy, okay, we have this going on. All of the partners, we need all hands on deck. So I'm just kind of showcasing how we all came together to do that. And then you'll see in the middle, just one of our young little girls who were celebrated for some improvement in attendance. And then again, one of the attendance recognition celebrations where we honored students with stickers. And we said, it says, I'm a part of the NBA club, never been absent club. So we honored those students at a school-wide assembly, and all of the students who hadn't missed a day of school were celebrated with those stickers. So those are just a few of the examples that we have of some of the activities that the network designs together in partnership with the school. So not only obviously does Big Brothers Big Sisters do ABC today, but through this collective impact model, we're also able to, as I mentioned before, really elevate mentoring, both one-to-one and group mentoring. We've launched a new trial group mentoring in our middle school ages, and working with our high school students and even post-secondary to really understand how do these partners that we work with ABC today also how do they really lean into some of the work that we're doing directly with one-to-one mentoring. Additionally, when we see that there are students who are not ready for mentoring, or they are not in a position where mentoring is really the right resource for them, we're offering intensive supports for students. So trying to work with their family. We have staff that are assigned to work with the school and reach out to the family to understand what are really the needs of the students that are preventing them from being at school, or preventing some of their success in the areas that we mentioned, behavior and course performance. And then again, navigating some of the resources that are available in the community, and in some cases, providing direct aid for the families that are within the school walls. So one of the things that we found as the greatest the coolest things that have come out of this model for us is that we're really strategic in identifying partners and contributions. So we may have one partner who's really passionate about the work in elementary schools, who are saying, I want to be at multiple schools because I kind of see what's happening in our community and we have the capacity to do that. And then partners can also have multi-layers of support. So we have one partner who's like, working with us to provide mentors in school buildings. They're providing a financial literacy curriculum to students, and they are serving as a network partner, doing some of the things that come up throughout the school year. The other thing that's been really cool is that our staff can create focus and align between different schools, districts, and communities. So although we know that each school is different in the makeup of their students and their staff and their priorities, there may be things that we can pull from each other, ideas, thoughts, strategies, efforts that can be shared for all the way from Cape Girardeau to the St. Louis region. And then the biggest thing is just really working with schools to identify where there's gaps and trying to bring those partners into the school. So if there's a gap in a business partner or faith-based partner, or the need for more mentoring services, we're out in the community trying to recruit those partners for and in support of the school so that we can impact all of the students within that building. And then the last thing is just like the relationships that are built between partners themselves are beneficial for everyone. So, you may have partners that are at the table and they didn't realize what each other were doing within a specific school. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things is that the principals or the school leaders who are working within that building don't have to have 15 conversations with 15 different partners about how they can support each other. It is one collective conversation about all of the things happening within a school, and each of those people understanding what is happening within the school and being able to support each other, and it really being a mutually beneficial partnership for every single partner that's at the table. So just a little bit about our last school year school scorecard. So you can see here we collect data on just north of 7,500 students, actually down since the pandemic. We have really tried to focus in our services and where we can have the greatest impact. We're in 19 schools in 3 different districts and work with over 160 partners. We have 234 ABC Today students and 54 students who are engaged in those intensive supports. And then below you can see some of our success in the different areas. One thing I want to mention just that kind of piggybacks off what Bob said earlier is that this year, going into the school year, our staff have been really committed and focused in working back with each of our schools around really two initiatives. And the first is helping support attendance. We know that in all schools that we work with, in all districts across Eastern Missouri, and I would venture to say all over the nation, attendance is a struggle. And so our focus has really been on how do we help support attendance. And the second focus that we've really been given is to build positive school culture, which we believe feeds into everything else. So how do we help build the positive school culture for staff and students so that we're building connections and we're building a sense of belonging for students who are in those buildings, and really trying to identify the very specific ways in which we're going to do that. If that's bringing tutoring, if that's bringing mentoring, if that's bringing additional after school activities into those schools. So with that, that's majority of what I wanted to share today. And I know that was a lot of nuts and bolts. So, I've shared my contact information in the slide and PowerPoint. So if anyone wants to reach out, I'm certainly open to discuss more about ABC today in Eastern Missouri.
Thank you, Ashley. As you know, folks, please ask some questions in the chat or share some comments and thoughts. And while you're doing that, I'll just kick it off. So Ashley, that on one hand, right, this what you show, makes so much sense, right? And the communities and schools working together and have a little bit of organization in the middle to bring them together. But we know in practice this is quite challenging. That's why we struggle to bring this to scale. So you guys have now been doing this over a number of years and across the number of schools. What are some of the things principals need for these partnerships to work? And then what are some of the things the community partners need for these partnerships to work?
That's a great question. I've always said that we enter these conversations eager to learn and eager to just truly be a partner. So when we come to a school, the first thing that we talk about with the principals are like, what are your priorities? What are your desires? What are your hopes for your school building, and where are you challenged? And then just really being open about communicating that to partners who come into the school, because we know that partners have things that they want to accomplish within the walls of the school as well. They have things that they might want to meet, like needs that they need to get met. And so it's really having an open dialogue, and I think a conversation about, one, like, what are the things that we're all going to agree to do? And then what are the things that you as a partner might want to do outside of this network? And how do we all agree that, yes, we can work in that direction, or it might not be that we can get there just yet, but here's some ways in which we can accommodate like what you're looking to get and what you're looking to do. So I think it's a lot of mediating and a lot of negotiating on how do we all get what we want, which is student outcomes and good things for students brought into schools, and how do we each stay in our lane and still make that happen. So hopefully I answered your question, but I think we always are seeking to understand, what does each person really think this model is about? And then how do we mold that to really ensure that each person can fit in, and it is mutually beneficial for all.
Right. And I think, what you're sort of implicitly stressing too is the sort of the importance that broker role that Big Brothers Big Sisters didn't start out to play, but ended up seeing as a very vital role sort of for this all to work.
Sure.
You're the connective glue that makes that conversation happen. And sometimes absent that connective glue, it's just a challenge for folks to get it started, right? Principals don't have the time to go out and interview a lot of community organizations to figure out which ones are a fit. And community organizations don't have too many mechanisms to contact schools other than sending an email and being one of 300 emails a day in a principal's box, 100 of which are trying to sell him or her stuff, right? And not to be put in sort of that box. So I think that's a key insight you sort of, discovered and ran with, and really trying to figure out how to make it work at scale. So thank you. Anne, did any questions come in or comments from the
We
chat?
do, Bob. This is Amanda. I got one.
Yep.
Came in, it said, I love Big Brothers Big Sisters. What did it look like getting partners and volunteers to come back after the pandemic?
So we're all still struggling with that, right? I think for us, one of the most beautiful things about this is that we had this going before the pandemic. And so with a network, so going into the pandemic, it made it really easy to shift and pivot for each of the network partners that were there because they were already ingrained in the school and the relationships were already established and that trust was already established. So they knew that when a principal came to us and said, no, like, I need you all to really think about and do this for me right now. Like, this is the most important part of what's happening. They were able to be like, okay, yeah, like we get that. We can run with that. As far as like the individual mentoring, we're still struggling with getting those, with getting additional mentors back into school buildings. And that's one of the reasons that we've taken this year to really focus on like, how do we do that? And how do we do that in an intentional way? Mentoring doesn't just have to be one-on-one mentoring, which is the traditional form of big brothers, big sisters, but we know mentoring is happening in a lot of capacities in a lot of schools in a lot of different ways through coaching. Teachers are natural mentors. So how do we support and how do we look at all of the different ways that mentors are like mentoring is happening, and how do we really embrace that?
Okay, let's now turn to Sophia and learn about Baltimore City and how they're trying to figure out how to do this at scale. Over to you.
Thank you, Bob. Today, want to really just talk about one, the newly launched Mentoring Adult Relationship Initiative and our plans to work toward closing the mentoring gap. And in this presentation, can you hear me?
Yes.
In this presentation, we're going to review the strategic approach, its impact, and the subsequent phases that were designed to increase the capacity of caring adults and students' lives in every building through systemic alignment, coaching conversations, and equitable distribution of resources. So similar, a lot of what my colleague just mentioned. So what is the mentoring gap? We know that, and many folks might be familiar with this information, but I just want to lay a foundation here so that we all have the same working language. National data tells us that 1 in 3 young people in the US will reach 19 without having a mentor. So this is our gap that we're working to close. And so caring adult relationships, we know, provide a safe and brave space for young people to unpack life as they navigate complex systems and manage change and make decisions that can lead to self-efficacy. So what do the numbers look like? With a mentor, youth facing risk have positive statistical gains. So you can see some of the numbers there. We knew that adults around our city have already supported our students and definitely wanted to continue offering mentorship and advising. So the Mentoring and Adult Relationships team that I'll share a little bit about, we call it namely MAR, is working to make it easier for volunteers to connect with our students in meaningful ways. Additionally, by strengthening our relationships, the MAR team is positioned to support schools in guiding and connecting with the right fit, high quality mentoring programs. So let's look at where did we start? So we got here as a part of the collaborative work done in the design lab with City Schools in Baltimore, Maryland, DC. What we knew was that City Schools stressed the importance of wholeness and relationships outlined in our Reconnect, Restore, and Reimagine work. So there was a priority in forming a team with a broad range of expertise necessary for this work. Last year, and I think in 2 weeks, I will celebrate my 1-year anniversary at the district. I've been working 3 decades outside of the district as a partner, but this is my first year working inside of the district. And so what we did was we laid the groundwork for our 22-23 efforts, specifically establishing internal district alignment, a foundation for sustainable infrastructure, and we relaunched Future Ready, which you'll hear a little bit more about. It's our district-led program. And then we softly launched a community of practice with partner-led mentoring programs. What we know that is critical to this is that key to mentoring are volunteers. That's what we know. So let's look at how did we do our initial implementation phases. They were designed to inform 4 phases. They were informed by valid research, best practices, and the Baltimore City Public Schools district context. Some of the key outputs included confirming me as the lead of the initiative, and then adopting the strategic proposal for implementation. And then phase 2, we really looked at hiring 3 specialists to lead aspects of the initiative, and then launching an executive committee, which I'll share a little bit later of what that's formed, because part of all of this work is really getting multiple departments and leads on the same page around a matter when you talk about having systemic impact. And then we also formed 4 subcommittees and of course work to get some alignment around marketing materials and communication efforts. And then in phase 3, we really focused in on high-level coordination with the key leadership and their teams critical to supporting the initiative, specifically looking at the training and onboarding of the newly hired MAR specialists, as well as training school counselors through our district PD, and of course having tons and tons of meetings. And then phase 4 of this work was really about getting aligned on how we could streamline volunteer recruitment and vetting process, as well as codify volunteer training so that it could be administered asynchronously, because we definitely learned a lot through the pandemic in hybrid and in person or virtual, as well as we really worked to unify the district-wide volunteer mentor management cycle. And so what we knew, next slide, was that there were tons and tons of meetings, executive committee, subcommittee, cross-departmental. And let's just look at the formation of that. The committees were guided by achieving the key milestones of internal district alignment, sustainable infrastructure, and piloting and scoping of mentoring programs. Key offices are listed right there: that Office of Equity, Whole Child Services and Support, College and Career Readiness, and Communications, Engagement, and Enrollment. And then you can see in color code the subcommittees that developed out of that. Those subcommittees represent work that is still in process, and I'll share some of the outputs from that from last year, and then what we are projecting to do in this upcoming year. And so with all of these committee meetings, the next slide, we learned that the trends and data recommended that leveraging both partner and district-run mentoring programming to support efforts to increase student engagement would be significant. Specifically, we wanted to look at partner and district-run mentoring program that evidence positive outcomes with project-based experiential learning, mentoring, and/or summer programming to really mitigate. So let's look at the repiloted. So Future Ready was piloted before I got here. And then when we joined the district and the team formed, we, through the data and kind of looking at what the feedback, the research was telling us, we decided to repilot Future Ready. We called it 2.0. It's kind of an inside term, but Future Ready is what it's called publicly. Our district-led college and career mentoring program was adopted by 5 schools. Each school was led by a site-based mentor coordinator who recruited the students and matched them with career volunteer. Let's take a look at a video that highlights some feedback that we received from our student participants and site-based mentoring coordinators this year.
Future Ready was such a great program for our students. Students really had an opportunity to get to figure out what they wanted to do. We know that 9th grade is such an important year for students to really start thinking about what they want to do for the rest of their life, no matter what those interests may lead. But in the Future Ready program, students were able to work with mentors to really help think about what they want to do and what steps they need to start thinking about and taking now as 14 and 15-year-olds.
One thing I'd like to say about this program is that it was very beneficial to those students that were able to take part in the program and use what the program had to offer in their real lives. The program taught them about the real world, finding their careers, finding out what they wanted to do with themselves, their personality types, gave them a lot of tools to help themselves, as well as the mentors to guide them through those tools, and it wasn't just coming from the teacher, so I think that was very, very well.
I really enjoyed Future Ready. Like, everything we did was awesome, especially the end celebration when we went to meet a group. I had a blast.
And one thing I liked about the mentor program that'll teach you how to get a job.
Future Ready was a great experience. I really love the mentors and the activities we did.
I want to thank all my mentors in this onward for putting me in the group. As I've been in the group, I progressed a lot. Something that I really like about the mentoring program is that it really helped me think about my future and just be open to trying new things. I say this because one of the mentors, Ash, suggested that I could be a pediatric nurse, and I was telling her how I feel like a pediatrician, you have to be in school for a really long time. You have to go through nursing school, then residency and all of that, and she suggested that I could be a pediatric nurse.
One thing that I learned about the mentor program is what I want to be. It really helped me out with like setting the point where what I want to do in life, basically. Everybody, all the mentors were nice. They helped me out. You know, it was a good time, you know, so.
My experience with Future Ready was amazing. The program really helped me think about how I could use my skills and my interests and put that towards the career I really want to pursue.
What I got out of the mentoring program is more confidence and experience, I suppose.
Some of the activities that I like is like doing the resume and talking about our career goals, and like the mentors helped us have like better understanding of what we want to be.
I also like talking about our colleges and stuff. Like we're supposed to, like, I don't know what I'm supposed to go right now or what I want to go right now, but I have ideas. And Future Ready literally helped me out with that, because at first I wasn't really sure. Like when I came into the program, I was like, yeah, I want to go to this school. But then the more I started going to the program, I was like, no, I want to go to a different school. So now I'm really trying to figure it out. And the mentors were nice too, because they gave me ideas and they opened my mind up a little bit more about different places and helped me understand that you don't have to pick right now, like choices, and I still have time to decide. And like what he said, the personality activities, I really like that too, because we got closer, we understood more about each other and about ourselves also, because a lot of us don't even know ourselves.
Some of the highlights of some of the sessions that we had were the students really enjoyed working on their resumes with the mentors. They also enjoyed the personality tests that they took. I think just having the opportunity to have those conversations about college and their interests, like some of them had never thought about it, or they didn't know what steps they needed to take to get to those future goals.
Our students had an awesome opportunity to learn how to build resumes. They had an awesome opportunity engaging with our mentors with the interview process. It was just amazing to see our students grow.
So again, that was some of our site-based mentor coordinators, our students and mentors. And then, so the other pieces, so we re-piloted Future Ready, and then we started scoping various partner and district-led mentoring programs. The mentoring programs are at various stages that you see kind of the logos for them in the partnering process. The key thing that I'll say, though, is that all have taken the first step of connecting with the school leaders and working together to ensure the programmatic implementation supports the school strategy and meets the students' needs. So let's look at another thing that we did, which is we launched City Schools inaugural June 22nd. The City Schools inaugural mentoring program event was launched on June 22nd. And this event was really designed to widen the table of mentoring programs and to establish a community of practice. And this is the one I was talking about, softly launching it with mentoring programs. The goal is to really strengthen that community of practice so that we can get to a place of having those right fit conversations with schools and mentoring programs. And so let's look at some key critical focus areas. So as a result of all of what happened this year, we made significant progress with our milestones and learnings from our repiloted program and scope models, as well as produce the outputs that you see listed here in this previous year. And so specifically frameworks and looking and having conversations about metrics and the evaluative practices that we will take and the standards. A lot of these items we want to bring into the conversations with our mentoring programs. So last section is what next. Right now, what next is strengthening the infrastructure and the positioning this work to be able to scale. And so we're working toward ensuring high quality mentoring programs are accessible through our school communities. We would like to continue to expand Future Ready 2.0, our college and career mentoring program, finalize the defining of our district standards, and continue scoping additional scalable mentoring program options. The big piece is really being able to scale share those during consultancy with schools as we partner with each school's leadership to identify the right fit programming that will strategically support the impact. And so our key milestones this year really are internal alignment of the standards for the district and partner-led mentoring programs, the infrastructure for the enrollment, placement, onboarding, and ongoing training of volunteer mentors, and mentoring programs in a community of practice. This is going to be critical because, again, that right fit mentoring program pairing conversation, schools are inundated with a lot of items. And so the way we see this happening is going to be through taking a consultative approach. And so let's look at the last few slides, our key outputs for this year that we're currently in: business processes, having a preliminary data dashboard. We've established a mentoring course for our schools to use to be able to capture in-school and out-of-school student engagement with mentoring through the mentoring course. The strategic scaling plan is in play. And then, of course, with the infrastructure and resources, we're specifically looking at the increasing the number of students matched via MAR, which is the Mentoring and Adult Relationships team, and mentoring programs being partnered with the district. And we're doing all of this through our consultancy model protocol. And that is the last slide, where we are supporting our students through helping schools find right fit mentoring programs. A lot of this was shared with our mentoring program, those who are partners and those who joined the community of practice. This has also been shared with our school leaders and various members of staff, and just throughout our entire community. The big piece that I want to highlight here is for volunteers that are interested. Naturally, they will go to our website. For school leaders, though, we are reaching out to them. Some of them are reaching out to us to have these conversations. And then with mentoring programs, they can start the process through our pod portal, which is our district's partnering system. And so lastly, school partnerships, we know, will be critical in ensuring this happens with fidelity. And so school partnerships with mentoring and adult relationship programs can support the growing need with structures, processes, and enhancements to our existing system. School partnerships with mentoring programs can ensure that expertise is brought to scale in Baltimore City Public Schools. The value of each of these components have the potential of planting seeds that can lead to the stickiness that our students need in terms of increasing their engagement, so that race is no longer a predictor of academic success. And so ultimately, overall, a scalable infrastructure and funding will be critical to closing the mentoring gap. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was so rich, Sophia. And I'm sure folks have a lot of questions, and while they're thinking of those and putting them in chat, I'm going to start with just two smaller, clarifying questions, and then I have a bigger question. So I think I saw, and you were showing so much rich work so quickly, that did you say you reduced the time it takes for a volunteer to be sort of processed and certified and vetted and found to be a safe and responsible adult to work with students?
It is in process. And for those of you who know about working in systems, it is a process. But I can say as of today, legal has approved the system that we're using. There have been many conversations. Procurement wants one other bid just to compare. But we found it, and what we want to do do is, again, in the district context, is really about piloting and getting the data so then you can find the sustainable and scalable options. And so this approach that we believe is going to shorten that process that you just called out, we want to be able to scale at. So we're going to start small, and we're likely going to move with Future Ready is the plan, to use it in that way so that we can get the learnings and the tweaks and get it streamlined as much as possible. And then the intention is that once we learn and tweak the process, that we'd be able to scale it.
Yeah. And I think once you get that figured out, that'll be invaluable to share with other districts, because I know it is a common challenge, and that, I'm also talking to some of the service providers, a pain point there, because many of them have their own processes that are sort of like, the system won't acknowledge that like there's like pre-work done sometimes to be built upon, right? It's always like, got to start from zero. And, so I think that'll be, among the many things you're doing, they're going to be valuable. That's going to be one of them. And this is part of this broader conversation we're having, how to do this work at scale. And then I think the other thing I just want to clarify is that it seemed like you were saying that, to get to scale, you're thinking about both where it makes sense to work with external providers, external organizations, and where it might make sense to build capacity within the school using school staff or adults in the building already. Is that part of the thinking? Yeah.
Yeah. So like with Future Ready, we had the site-based mentor coordinators, which we learned a lot about. We also, there are tons of caring adults that are in the building. So that's another conversation around kind of what does that look like. My team is functioning as internal consultants. So part of that is like determining what's the most feasible, sustainable way to have that human individual that's in the building that has a level of visibility to support if that particular school decides that they want to partner with that right fit mentoring program, or if that school decides that it wants to create its own. Like some of our schools have their own mentoring programs, and they pinged me to come and check it out. And so that's part of it. One of the things I didn't mention is we did a gap analysis. When we started all of this, our school leaders were surveyed, and they identified school mentoring programs that were in existence, like that's happening in their school buildings. And then when we got that information, we turned around and reached out to the mentoring programs that they had identified. And we asked them two questions. Are you either working with a student that's in that community, or are you a partner with the school? Because sometimes our mentoring programs are in the community and not necessarily they are engaging with a student. And so we learned through that gap analysis kind of where our schools are showing up as not having any type of programming. And of course, we all know, those of us who, do this kind of work, that even that has to be kind of unpacked a little bit too, because again, some folks are doing things at their schools and it might not just be as formal. And so part of all of this work is kind of beginning to lay the foundation to set folks up for success around this work. And so the infrastructure was really critical in this first year. And so we're looking for some of those other outputs in the coming quarters.
Yeah, it's really rich what you're doing. And my last question is to wonderment. Have you looked at it? And if you have, what have you learned about sort of peer-based programs?
So we have peer-based. So this is an internal statement I'm going to make for this quiet room that we're in, is that when we are at the peer-to-peer mentoring, that's when I know we are really doing the work. That is like this work is happening in stages, and there is a strategy. And yes, to answer your question, yes, very much interested. It is absolutely, and just to personalize it, when I, as a Baltimore City Public School graduate, I did peer to peer, and I actually caught the bus to West Baltimore Middle School, and I remember that, and it was significant. It was a significant impact to put the content. It was led by someone at the district who convened us, and we put together the materials, and then we went and caught the bus all around the city with our tokens to do this work. And so that is the long-term when we know that the infrastructure, we've identified those key impactful mentoring programs, we've started that consultancy piece and helped our schools kind of get to where they need to be, and then we can like pivot into that. When I start seeing that happening, then I know we're really doing this mentoring work. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. Amanda, do we have any questions in chat?
We do. We have one from John that says, thanks, Ashley and Sophia, for sharing your general infrastructure components for mentoring. What are one or two key goals that you have for the individual student mentoring experience?
For the individual student mentoring,
yes, the individual student mentoring experience.
One of them is that students build efficacy, self-efficacy. And what I mean by that is that that they are finding themselves in a context in which it is safe and brave, and they're able to explore and be exposed to options that lead to building self-efficacy. Because part of, we all know this as adults now, is that ability to navigate complex systems. A lot of times those systems are not going to change overnight, but if you have that caring person in your corner and you have that self-awareness, that self-efficacy can kick into play and you can navigate those complex systems. So I'll just name one because I want my colleague to be able to name one, but that is a part of what we want to see, that coaching conversation, that courageous conversation that allows young folks to build their self-efficacy muscle.
And I'll jump in. I would say one of ours is self-identity and confidence, just really trying to understand what the growth in that is and how do they, just piggybacking off of what Sophia said. I mean, all of those things are so important, as we know, as young people age through their school experience, really being able to advocate for themselves. And you can see that through their confidence. So we're measuring for those things.
Thank you. Any others, Amanda? Or are we?
Not at this time. You're good.
Okay, great. So I really want to thank Sophia and Ashley for sharing really the tremendous work they're both doing, and really, I think showing us that this idea of working at scale is possible. I mean, I think they're showing it's challenging. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that has to happen in a thoughtful way for this to succeed. But I really think they're both showing us sort of inventive ways. One is a school system, one from an external partner working with school systems, how we can really think about bringing these community partnerships with schools to scale to help, close those relationship and support gaps. And why this is so important, right, is that so often in the past, a lot of our partnerships with schools and community partnerships have been very rich, but they've been sort of very organic and very sort of limited in either duration or locale. And it's just sort of like a swirling ecosystem, but somewhat ever changing. And to really get to a systematic change, right, we've got to be able to get to that scale question. And I think both these are really rich efforts and really, I think a challenge to other folks to show that like you could try to take this on. It's not too big, it's not too daunting, it's hard, but it's not impossible. And I really, really want to shout them out for the work they're doing. And with that, I want to open it up to anyone else who wants to share maybe an effort you're involved in, or a resource you have, or some thinking you have about how we really approach this idea of taking to scale sort of school community partnerships and using that to fill sort of relationship and support gaps. Right, Garrett, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just want to first thank Ashley and Sophia for your presentations. This is really exciting work. I personally am currently working with a client. I'm working with the mayor of the City of London. He has an initiative that he announced earlier this year to match 100,000 young people in need in the City of London with a quality trained mentor, right? So scaling is constantly what I am trying to deal with and how to appropriately address it. So to see it be done. Granted, this is beyond just the scope of schooling, but ultimately, I do believe that the school is kind of at the bedrock of our society, right? And I think it's how we build community, and I think that's how you can ultimately scale and develop what I would like to see is a nation and cities that are mentor forward, youth mentor focused. And so a question that I'm always looking to propose, and I'll start with you, Ashley, when you're looking at your schools, how, or just looking internally, like what is, if you could provide like a high level overview of like what you need to see in order for Big Brothers Big Sister of Southern Missouri to say, okay, we're now ready to take that next step. So is it, number of youth that you're serving? Is it having a waiting list? Is it number of volunteers that you have signed up? Like what are some of those measures that let you know, like, hey, we need to bump this up, we need to scale, we need to expand our scope and our reach here. And then for Sophia, just want to get a sense of, once again, what is your thinking process there in terms of scaling and expanding reach school to school?
I can jump in. Garrett, thanks for that question. For us, I think when we look at where are we expanding and what does it take? I think relationship is first. What schools are open to this? Do you have a model and do you have capacities built in place to be able to really support this? And will you embrace this? Because as we all know, we can develop partnerships, but if they aren't working and it's only one-sided, then you really go nowhere. So I think someone who really embraces the model of collaboration and community partnership from a school standpoint is really, really impactful for us. And then to your point, going a little bit deeper to say, okay, like what is the makeup of your school? Talk to us about all of the things, the challenges that you're seeing, the successes that you have also, and how do we build upon your successes to really help support where you have challenges. So I think for us, that is really the first part of the conversation is how can we be in partnership together and having a clear expectation about what we can do, what we bring, but what we expect from someone and what they can expect from us.
From our end, I would say it's having indicators that show that there's high impact. When you're talking about systemic scale, the conversation is a little like broader and there are competing priorities at the district. And so when you talk about it's being able to, so like I've been doing this for 3 decades. I know what it looks like. But there's another thing to build a case around. No, this is really good. This is a transformational exchange. It's going to be great. Just give it 3 more years. So it's putting an infrastructure in place that will capture indicators that can show progress to goal, particularly high impact. And then from there, like that pilot in positioning that pilot in a way that when you see like significant increase, it doubled in size, and that helps to begin to make that case. Then there's also the accountability of what's happening nationally as well as locally, pairing all that into the context in a way in which there are standards to hold us all accountable in how we guide this work to determine if it's high quality, because it could be, in terms of dosage or the amount of touch points that based off of the research that you might be looking at to define your work, where you're trying to make decisions around what is going to qualify as a high quality exchange. And so using those metrics as well to kind of help guide those decisions around, is it time to scale?
Thanks. Do we have any more, Amanda?
Not at this time.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to close this out then by sharing some upcoming opportunities to continue the discussion and the learning in different ways. So our next Pathways to Adult Success Solution Forum will be on November 15th and the 3rd of the fall season on December 13th. So stay tuned for those. Our Pathways to Adult Success Design Challenge is open now. These are for organizations looking for ways to sort of improve on and meet a challenge within this idea of building pathways to adult success for all kids. You can there's a place where you can apply and learn more about how you can sign up and apply for our design challenge. And we go to the next slide. We have a designing education podcast series also that's out and about, and you may find something interesting. You'll see Ashley's there as well. If you want to go a little more in depth, check that out. And then I want to share 2 other opportunities from some of our partner or affiliated efforts. The National Partnership for Student Success, which is really working to sort of scale mentoring and tutoring and success coaching and post-secondary advising and wraparound supports, has a series of webinars on each of those areas forthcoming or available on tape. That's a good thing to check out to keep the learning going from today. And then finally, our grad partnership which is really working to change and improve student support and student success systems, has its own community of practice with the cycle of learnings and events throughout the year, and you should check those out as well. And with that, I want to say thank you, be well and onward, and I'm glad we are all able to come together again with our Pathways to Adult Success Solution Forum, and we look to having another year of learning and sharing and improving together with you. Thanks.